Okay, so we're off and running. Let me turn this down a little bit more. Okay, so this is a Parlor Car Chats. This is a program of the San Luis Obispo Railroad Museum. Welcome all of you to today's chat session. And you can see there on the screen, that's the front page of the museum's website. And there's some options there I want to point out in case you want to help the museum survive, if you will, during this time of basically zero income. We would appreciate it. So there's a couple of ways to make donations there. Moving on. Here we go. So today, what we're talking about is a trip that I took along with my wife and another couple on this Amtrak Coast Starlight train from San Luis Obispo, there in the bottom, towards the bottom of the map that you're looking at. And we took the train up to Klamath Falls, got off at Klamath Falls and rented a car, visited Oregon Caves, Mount Hood, and Mount Rainier, and then returned to San Luis Obispo by train from Seattle. It's a great kind of trip to do. I just love doing these, and there's all kinds of ways to do them. I'll point out a few things at the tail end, but it is possible. You might have to work at it a little bit. It is possible to do some pretty interesting trips by train, depending on what it is you want to see, Civil War sites or great lodges of the national parks like we're doing here. So we got on the train in San Luis Obispo. There's well, I'm behind the camera. There's three of us there closest to the camera. And then we had another guy in the back who sort of joined in on our conversations. This is in the Parlor car, by the way, from which we get the name Parlor Car Chats. The Coast Starlight is the only Amtrak train that has a parlor car, and it doesn't always have a parlor car. You want to make sure that you check with Amtrak and make sure it's come and gone, and sometimes it's half the time it's there, sometimes it isn't. So I would definitely encourage you to get out there and take advantage of this for as long as you can. I'm not sure how long it's going to last. It's only for sleeper car passengers, so it's really comfy. It's got its own bar in there. I think there's some snacks available too. There's a movie theater downstairs, I think, or maybe that's a different car, I forget. But what I like about doing train trips or trips by train is that the minute you get on the train, you're on vacation. And you stay on vacation until you step off the train when you're back home. Unlike flying, at least for me, vacation doesn't start until you get off the airplane and you're at your destination. Flying is not my idea of fun. And then your vacation is over as soon as you get on the head for the airport at wherever you've been to come home. So you get some extra time vacation-wise when you're traveling by train, I think. Well, here's a couple of shots. Moscow mules were popular on the Starlight that day in the Parlor car, and there's Lynn standing at the back of the Parlor car, and the car behind her is the sleeper car. Let's see, I'm getting some message here about, I heard the old Parlor cars were sold. The only car left is the lounge car for all passengers, coach and sleeper. Oh, that's too bad. Well, here's a piece of history then, I guess. This is what a trip looked like back in the days of the parlor cars. That's a real shame. Okay, on we go. Here we are climbing the grade, leaving San Luis Obispo, heading up to the top, going over the top of Cuesta Grade, and then on 2 points north. I just love traveling by train. It's like you get to see everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, of wherever you're traveling to and wherever you're traveling through to get there. Unlike an airplane from 35,000 feet, you basically see nothing. Although I can't, that's not exactly quite true, because being a geologist, I love seeing some of the bigger units of formations and topography from the air. But that's about it. And if you don't happen to be into geology, it's really not very exciting. But on the train, you see it all. Here we're going past Camp Roberts in North County. Here's the dining car, which of course we enjoy. This is another thing with Amtrak that I guess is they keep downgrading or at least changing the menus and systems and so on. But we'll see if those survive too for the long distance train. Pretty cool little emblem sketched onto a plastic or a glass that between the booths in the dining car. I'm not showing all of the stops we made or can be made along this. This is the one I happen to get. These are the pictures I happen to get on this particular trip. Dunsmuir is an interesting stop for the Starlight. It's in Northern California. And unfortunately, it's not a particularly great time of day if you want to see Dunsmuir, which is an interesting railroad location. And we'll see a picture or two here in a minute. But the southbound Starlight gets to Dunsmuir like shortly after midnight or something like that. And the northbound Starlight gets to Dunsmuir just before 5 a.m. Neither of which are great for lighting. You don't see much, except when the Starlight is running late, which happens occasionally, and you get there more like 6 a.m. or 6 a.m. And now all of a sudden dawn is breaking, and you can get a picture like this one at Dunsmuir. So it's always okay with me if the train's running a little bit late. Here's a turntable at Dunsmuir. There's interesting stuff along the tracks here. There's a depot slash museum slash train station. I'm not sure how all those are connected, but it is an interesting. One of these days, I think we'll have to just stop there and spend the night and then continue our trip the next day sometime. And we're in the vicinity of Mount Shasta, I think it is, as we're heading north towards Klamath Falls. Let's see, here we are. Okay, we've made it to Oregon Cave. So what we did in Klamath Falls, of course, there's a car rental either right by the station or very close. I forget exactly. It wasn't hard to do. Picked up a car there, drove over to Oregon Caves. It was a couple hours or something like that. And here's the Chateau, one of the Great Lodges. Lynn and I got interested in this Great Lodges thing some number of years ago. This was in 2016, this trip, and we had already done a couple. And there's several books. I have a link on the Parlor Car Chat page that will send you to Amazon and show you all the Great Lodges books. And we've sort of made a bucket list, or in this case a lodge list, of all these great lodges in the national parks. And it's really fun to do. We've done 6, maybe 7 of them now. We're going to do another one in a month Bryce Canyon. Not by train, unfortunately. Salt Lake City train is kind of like Dunsmuir. It gets there at the wrong time of day to make any kind of connections or be semi-reasonable. But anyway, we're going to do that one by not by train. These are generally, they're old, they're interesting, they're wonderful environments to be in. Not necessarily always the best amenities because they're old, but we don't mind missing out on a few of those. Okay, moving on here. This is a daytime shot of the pieces of the Oregon Cave Chateau. The picture on the left is the back side of it. You can see inside the windows to the left, the dining room. And then kind of a close-up shot of a table set up at the dining room. One really fun thing about the Oregon Cave Chateau is that it's well supported by locals and local music people. It's a little bit of a drive outside of the nearest town, like 45 minutes, as I recall, something like that, which is not insignificant. But nonetheless, they get groups to come up and play on the weekends and whatnot. We happened to be there. We didn't know this was going to happen, but they happened to be there, so we enjoyed their music one evening. Here we're getting ready to go into the cave itself. This is why the chateau is there. This cave system, which is a really fun tour. Here we are literally heading into the cave to start the tour. And we'll show you a couple of pictures here of what it looks like inside there, just to tease you a little bit. It's really fun and really, really cold. If you're there in the summer, that 55 degrees in there feels really good. Some stalactites hanging on tightly to the ceiling. There's some calcium carbonate deposits that have since been worn down. Nice little pond outside the chateau. They had a fun little soda fountain set up as one of the restaurant food choices. There was another family there with a couple of kids that ordered 3 of these sodas, and they were beside themselves. Lots of wildlife when you get out into these national parks. And some of the other wildlife can have fun too, I suppose. Hiking galore. I think we were there a couple, 3 days, and probably spent anywhere from 6 to 8 hours a day hiking with all kinds of paths. This is not one of the bigger national parks either, but still enough acres to have all kinds of trails to enjoy. This was a weird little gift shop store as we were leaving Oregon Caves headed for Mount Hood. It's just north of Oregon Caves, not too far. I would bet an hour or less. And it was a fun distraction for the drive to sort of break it up. Amazing little roadside setup. And not little, really. It's pretty big. All right, so here we're at Mount Hood. This is Timberline Lodge, built during the Depression. And inside, of course, it's grand, as you would expect of a great lodge. There are a few pictures. The artwork in it was done by a WPA worker at the lodge during the Depression when it was built. And it definitely tells some interesting stories. There's a link, again, lots of links this time actually on the Parlor Car Chat page for this session. And one of the links is to a video about the artwork at the lodge. Here's a view of a non-COVID looking restaurant there at the lodge. Kind of an evening shot. There's Mount Hood. It's actually as you approach the Timberline Lodge from a couple, 3 miles away from the lodge. Another inside shot of the lodge. Again, you can see all the artwork around the wall. And this just kept going, either artwork or photos all throughout the lodge that was from that period. One of the fun things you do, we were obviously there in the summer, but the chairlift for the snow skiing in the winter continues to operate through the summer, and you can ride it up part way and spend some time halfway up, well, probably not even halfway up the mountain, and then come back. That's pretty fun. We certainly did that. There's a view from the chairlift looking down on the lodge to the left there. There's a shot of the mountain as we see it from Trillium. Is that the name? I think it's Trillium Lake. You can see the kayaker on the left. Good photo spot. Love to have the mountain reflection in the water. That's always fun. Okay, now we're at Mount Rainier. This is Paradise Inn. Just give you a few quick pictures here to give you some idea of what that looks like. Another grand lodge. Really fun to be at. Again, all kinds of hiking, wildflowers. There's a glacier kind of feature on the side of Mount Rainier. Again, hiking, days and days and days and days of hiking. Oh, this was interesting. Mount Rainier happens to be on the path of the Pacific Crest Trail, which is a 2,600 and some mile along the divide kind of path that runs all the way from Southern California to well, both borders, from Mexico to Canada, where you literally follow the Continental Divide, or the Western Continental Divide. Maxes out at 13,000 some hundred feet as the highest point on the trail. It crosses 25 national forests, 7 national parks. It runs along the Cascades and the Sierra Nevadas, which meet, by the way, those two ranges meet somewhere in the middle. I don't remember exactly where. And while we were there, we happened upon one of the guys doing the trek. Takes months and probably years, literal years of training and prep for it. And this guy that's me on the right, and the guy on the left was sharing where he'd been, where he was going, and what it was like. Pretty amazing feat if you can do it. Interesting lenticular cloud, just a cool cloud formation around the mountain that morning. More hiking, streams. That's very cold water. It's still snow melt. Obviously had a great time. Lots of falls. This was the animal of choice at Mount Rainier. It's called a marmot, M-A-R-M-O-T. Interesting critter, and it sort of became a game for people to come back from hikes with pictures and stories about the marmots and what they saw. It's hard to tell the size there, but they're like a small dog, about that size roughly. And there's people all over the place trying to get pictures of them. They would climb over these rocks that you see on the right. They're kind of everywhere, as long as there weren't too many humans around. A few bees managed to find too. There's a shot of the Paradise Inn at night. Caught that little chickadee. butterfly. Okay, so now we've made it to Seattle. We left Mount Rainier and drove to Seattle and spent the night there. Actually, I might have spent 2 nights there just for fun in order to catch the train back to San Luis Obispo from Seattle. And of course, we stayed down by the wharf and the Pike's Market and all that stuff, which is sort of a center of touristy type stuff. There's the fish market at Pike's Market where they talk about having the flying fish. The guys working it toss fish like the one in his hand from one side of the counter to the other to another guy who's over there to catch it. So that's the flying fish thing. It's pretty exciting. Everybody's there filming it with their phones or whatnot to get a piece of that action. A little nighttime shot or sunset shot in Seattle. And now we're back aboard the Starlight, headed south to San Luis Obispo. You can see here we had the parlor car to ourselves at this moment. Now, in here you can see there's these cushy couch things at one end. Then towards the middle, there's a few dining tables, like maybe 6, 3 on each side. And then clear in the back is that bar area that I mentioned. They have bar service most of the time. And now we'll take a look at some of the sights from the train on this trip back to San Luis Obispo. We're obviously in Tacoma from the sign on that top of that bridge. This is I could sit hours and hours and hours just watching the world go by on a train trip. It's just spectacular. Lots of port action, of course, up by Tacoma, Seattle area. Remember I said you catch the good, the bad, and the ugly? A lot of the train ride up in the Washington area as you're leaving Seattle is along water. I mean, and very close, almost. Well, not almost. It's at least in some part like the surfliner trip down along Santa Barbara and coming up to San Luis Obispo. You're very close. This shot was taken from the train with a little bit of a zoom lens, but my lens doesn't do that much zooming. I had to be pretty close for this. There's a riverside settlement of some sort along the way. That was kind of interesting. One of the major bridges across. Some ferry boats. Here the train went underneath this loading supply line that you see in the air there, that pipe, that big pipe. I'm not sure exactly what it was conveying down to where they would load the ships, but we went right under it. Let's see, I don't remember, I can't quite read the sign on the building, which station this is, but that's always a interesting thing. You get to stop at a station, see people coming and going, a little bit of activity, and some of these very interesting stations all along the way. More of the waterside housing that we saw. Again, all these pictures are taken from the train as we sped by. I think this is Portland, where we had probably a crew change, a fueling. Let's see, I think in the next picture, yep, we also got the locomotive washed. So it was something of a lengthy stay, kind of like the 30 to 45 minute stay there. Much like the one in San Luis Obispo, actually. At least last time I was there, the Starlight was doing a crew change there, so it would take some time, get things on and off from the dining car and so on. more of Portland Station from opposite the train track side. This is the obviously the cars and so on side. And inside, I love these old stations. This is the bridge you cross. You can see the Starlight about halfway across the bridge here. There's the tail end of it, and you can see the cars running along here. That's the train we're on. A little wine tasting in the afternoon if you happen to hit it right. That's always fun. There's the station in Eugene, Oregon. I think that's Eugene too, the inside of it. Occasionally you see some pretty interesting housing, homes, mansions, whatever you would call this. This was somewhere Oregon, from Eugene, Oregon, south of there by a little bit. Maybe I don't remember exactly where, but I certainly thought it was an interesting house. Following the river, the countryside is just beautiful, particularly Oregon and Washington. You're in the woods an awful lot of the time. You can usually or often see in the distance mountains like Shasta and Hood and Rainier as you're traveling. It's really beautiful. Here we are in Sacramento. We're on the train, or on the platform anyway, out by the train. It got moved away. The tracks were all realigned some number of years ago. I forget exactly. And the passenger platform got moved considerably further away from the station itself than it was originally. So now I think it's an underground kind of thing. You take a cart path out, or you could walk, I suppose. There's an inside shot from the parlor car while we were sitting at Sacramento. There's the Southern Pacific engine houses, or what's left of them. The buildings are pretty much standing, but I'm not sure what else is going on in there these days. And now we're just doing some countryside shots as we continue our way south towards San Luis Obispo. A rail-served port there. You can see the railroad tracks on the kind of lower right there. And there's a tug that is not in very good shape. Remember that good, bad, and ugly thing? It's all interesting. Here's a salt manufacturer or creator or whatever you'd call it. In the Oakland, San Francisco area, I think. That's a lot of salt. Here's a little ghost town that you go through, sort of in the swampy area along the river there. It's called Drawbridge. I think that's the name of it. And some amazingly old, dilapidated, long abandoned little town along here that the railroad tracks go right through. Another area of kind of interesting surface. You're not sure what planet you're on when you first look at a scene like that. So now we've made it to Santa Clara, obviously, the switch tower there. Another of the many, many wayside buildings that you see along the when you're riding the train. Oh, let's see, what station is that? I'm not sure. But another little grand station along the way. With the Starlight, generally, there's enough time to get on and off, like 10 minutes, so you can run in, get a picture of the station and so on. It's not always true with not with the not long distance trains like the Surfliner, their stops at places are often not long enough to get any kind of picture outside the train unless you're just standing at the door. Some of the train crew here trying to keep us moving. Another shot along the way. And now, probably most of you recognize that as Highway 101 coming down from Cuesta Grade. We've peaked the grade and are headed down now into San Luis Obispo. And here's a shot of Stenner Creek Trestle, probably one of the most well-known railroad features in the Central Coast. And that gets us home. I just took a snapshot of what the Amtrak National Parks vacation webpage looks like. They have a number of vacation trips. You can do different kinds of things. You see on the left-hand side there, you can do getaways, rail experiences, rail and sail, coast to coast. They have various kinds, but one of them, the one that's checkmarked, is national parks. So they have ways to get you from the train to the park, visit the park, stay at the park for a varying number of days. Generally speaking, those prices that you see on the right do not include the train fare, interestingly enough, to get you to that station that's closest to the park. This package basically takes you from the train out to the park, stay at the park, tours at the park, whatever, or multiple parks in some cases, and then gets you back to the train, and then off you go to wherever you came from. And there's a link to this that will be on the, or already is actually on the Parlor Car Chats page. And I think that gets us to the end. Yeah. In the upper left-hand corner, as is always, a reminder that you could donate to the museum if that would move you. In the upper right-hand corner, there's the Parlor Car Chats page that I've mentioned a couple of times. You can go there to find out what's coming up, what's already happened. The ones that already happened are recorded, so you can watch them anytime, or if you miss one, go back and check that it's there. There's a feedback link there, that second line down on the right. You can give us some feedback as to what you think of the Parlor Car Chats, any suggestions, topics you might like. There's actually a list you can check. You can also submit your own ideas. And lastly, the next Parlor Car Chat will be on October 10th. That's 2 weeks from today. And I'm going to share with you pictures and story from a very recent trip that Lynn and I took last month, a couple weeks ago, somewhere in there, to Omaha, and we stopped at North Platte on the way and visited the Union Pacific's Bailey Yard, a huge railroad yard. You can see in the picture, get some idea of what it's like. They have a golden spike tower there. It's a tower, observation tower that is built to look like a huge railroad spike. It's pretty cool. And then we learned about some interesting, great acts of kindness by railroads and railroad-affiliated people that occurred some years ago in the history of North Platte and the Union Pacific Railroad and so on in this area. So if you want to join us for that, that would be great. Let's see. Let me turn things back on and see if anybody has anything they want to share here. Okay, you should be unmuted. Oh, I can't hear anything. Let's see. I'm not hearing anybody. No. Okay, I guess not. So, well, thank you all for joining. We got a little bit of short one. We got a little bit of short one, so you have more of your Saturday available to you now.
Hey, Jamie?
Yeah.
Have you ever done any of the Amtrak organized trips, or have you always done trips on your own?
We've always done them on our own.
Okay, I was just curious what you thought of the Amtrak ones, if you had ever done it. So
there's a couple that I want to do, but we just haven't gotten around to them yet.
Yeah,
I'll let you know.
in here.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thanks everyone for joining, and we will see you on the 10th.
Thank